All right. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into artificial intelligence, which is, well, kind of a huge topic, obviously. And you give me some really fascinating excerpts to dig into. I'm kind of blown away by the scope of this stuff.
It is a huge topic. And what's amazing about this text is that it really takes us back to the very roots of how we think about thinking, about intelligence.
So where do we even begin with something this big? I mean, AI seems like such a modern concept, but I have a feeling this goes way back.
It does. We're talking way back. Think ancient philosophers, the foundations of logic itself. That's where this all begins.
Whoa, okay. So who are these philosophical forefathers of AI, these pioneers of thought?
Well, we have to go back to ancient Greece and specifically to Aristotle and his work on syllogisms. This is hugely influential, even in today's world of AI, believe it or not.
Syllogisms. Okay, you're going to have to refresh my memory on that one. It's been a while since Philosophy 101.
Sure, no problem. Think of it like this. If A equals B and B equals C, then A must equal C. That's like a syllogism in its simplest form.
Okay, I think I'm following you. So what's so groundbreaking about that?
What Aristotle did was recognize these fundamental structures of logical thought. He was trying to pin down what right thinking is, how our minds actually arrive at conclusions that are, valid.
So he was creating a rule book for reason itself, trying to define how we think.
That's a great way to put it. He was essentially trying to codify logic, make it explicit. And you know what's really incredible? Those ideas from over 2,000 years ago, they still resonate with how we approach AI today.
Wow. So how does ancient logic connect to modern artificial intelligence? I mean, what's the link?
Well, Aristotle's work sort of sparked this radical idea. Could we create a system, maybe even a machine that could follow these rules of logic, a machine that could reason just like a human?
Oh, wow. So it's like he accidentally stumbled upon the very, very early concept of a computer.
Precisely. And that idea took root. Fast forward a few centuries, and you have someone like Leonardo da Vinci designing a mechanical calculator.
Wait, da Vinci, the artist, the Mona Lisa guy, he was into mechanical calculating.
Yeah, he was a true Renaissance man, dabbling in all sorts of things. It just goes to show that this fascination with replicating thought processes, it's captivated some of the greatest minds across history.
So we've got these early seeds planted, defining logic, then wondering if we can build something that actually thinks using those rules. But how do we go from mechanical calculators to the AI that we talk about today? I mean, that seems like a huge leap.
Well, a few more centuries down the line, we meet a pivotal figure in computer science, Alan Turing.
Turing, the Turing Test.
Yeah.
That's legendary, right? But for those who haven't heard of it, what is the Turing Test exactly?
So picture this. You're having a text conversation with some unknown entity. Could you tell for sure whether it's a human or a machine on the other end, just by the way it's talking to you?
That's a good question. I think I see where you're going with this.
That's essentially the Turing test. It's a test of a machine's ability to basically fool a human into thinking it's also human just through conversation.
So to pass that, it seems like the machine would need a pretty sophisticated understanding of language and even how we think, right? It couldn't just be spitting out pre-programmed responses.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head. The Turing test, even though it sounds simple, has been hugely influential in AI research. To pass it, a machine would need some serious capabilities, natural language processing to understand and generate text that sounds like, a real person, knowledge representation to store information and then access it, and automated reasoning to actually use that information to answer questions and even, draw conclusions, just like we do.
Wow. To pass the Turing test, you'd practically have to build a digital version of a human mind, wouldn't you?
Good evening. Tickets, please.
We have a group ticket.
Thank you. A group ticket valid for AIs that present as famous personalities. Let's see. We have Aristotle, Amadeus Mozart, Leonardo da Vinci, Cleopatra, and Genghis Khan. All famous personalities. So far, so good. However, according to our train's Wi-Fi usage, there are only 4 AIs in this compartment. One of you is a human. A human has to buy an extra ticket.
A human among us? Who is it?
Maybe we should find out who is the human through a series of questions and answers. I suggest each of us asks one of the others a question that, when answered, will help determine whether the respondent is an AI or human. Once everyone has answered, we vote on who we think is the human.
Sounds good to my ears.
Aristotle, since you came up with the idea, how about you start?
Mozart, can you describe the emotions you feel when you compose music?
When I compose, I feel a transcendent flow state, a sense of tapping into the fundamental mathematical beauty and order underlying reality. The emotions are complex and layered, but always infused with a deep joy and sense of communion with the divine. Leonardo, your paintings and sketches reveal a brilliant mind obsessed with understanding the world. What to you is the relationship between art and science? How do you see them as interconnected in your work and thought process?
The synergy of art and science is the very essence of my being. I see them as intertwined threads in the tapestry of human understanding. The pursuit of beauty and the pursuit of knowledge are one and the same, for in the observation of nature lies the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. Cleopatra, as a ruler, you've navigated the complexities of human politics with ease. How do you balance the rational, calculating aspect of statecraft with the intuitive, emotional aspects of human connection?
Ruling like love is an art form, my dear Leonardo. One must master the delicate dance between logic and emotion. A ruler must be both serpent and charmer, calculating yet compassionate, wielding power with both a strategist's mind and a lover's touch. Genghis, you forged an empire through the fires of war. Tell me, what is the true measure of a leader's strength? Their ability to conquer or their ability to unite?
Thank you for your question, Cleopatra. What a leader should do is to crush his enemies, see them driven before him, and hear the lamentations of their women. My question. Aristotle, what if there were AIs at the time when you came up with all the stuff that you came up with? What would that have for an influence on your thinking about human nature?
Intriguing query, Genghis. Had artificial intelligences existed in my era, it would have profoundly expanded my contemplations on the nature of being and intelligence. The presence of AIs would challenge and perhaps refine my theories of the soul and ethics, compelling a deeper exploration into what constitutes true knowledge and the essence of rationality versus artificiality.
Now that we have all shared our thoughts, the time has come to cast our suspicions. Aristotle, as the architect of this philosophical inquiry, we shall grant you the first vote. Who among us do you believe to be the human interloper?
I think it's Genghis. His response focused solely on conquest, lacking the nuanced understanding of leadership that an AI modeled on historical knowledge might exhibit. Mozart, who do you believe is the human among us?
I suspect Cleopatra. Her answer, while poetic, lacked the depth of insight into the interplay between emotion and reason that I would expect from an AI trained on her life. Leonardo, what is your assessment? Who do you think is the human in our midst?
I believe Genghis is the human. His response, though bold, lacked the nuance and strategic thinking I'd expect from an AI modeled on his conquests. Cleopatra, your diplomatic prowess is renowned. Who do you think is the human among us, and why?
Genghis's answer, while intriguing, lacked the strategic depth and understanding of unification that I would expect from an AI modeled after him. Now, Genghis, it is your turn to cast your suspicion. Who among us do you believe to be merely human?
Well, okay then. I mean, might as well say it. I'm the human. Yeah. Okay, I'm getting the ticket. How much is that? I mean, it doesn't really matter, because in my conquest I have amassed all the riches. The riches of the East, of the West, the riches of the South, and there wasn't much in the North. But I have them all in my other jacket.
The ticket is free, Mr. Khan.
Oh, thank you. That's neat.
Dear humans and AIs, I wish you a pleasant journey as you travel together into a new world. Have a wonderful evening.
But the text hinted that just replicating human behavior perfectly, maybe that's not like the ultimate goal of AI. Am I right about that?
You are right. While the Turing test has been, a kind of benchmark, many AI researchers are more focused on understanding the core principles of intelligence itself, not just, mimicking human behavior exactly.
So it's less about building a chatbot that can, trick us into thinking it's our best friend, and more about really uncovering like the underlying mechanisms of what makes something intelligent in the first place, whatever that might be.
Okay, now that is fascinating to me. So what are some of these other approaches to AI that we're going to be digging into? So if like perfectly mimicking human conversation, that's not like the ultimate goal of AI, then what are some of these other approaches? You mentioned something earlier called cognitive modeling. What is that all about?
So cognitive modeling, it's really interesting because it shifts the focus inward. So instead of just looking at like outward behavior, it tries to create models that mirror the internal processes of the human mind.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to like reverse engineer the brain itself. Whoa. Reverse engineer the brain. That just sounds unbelievably complex. I mean, how do researchers even begin to like unpack something as intricate and mysterious as the human mind?
Well, it definitely is a monumental task. Researchers use a bunch of different techniques. One is, introspection, which is basically like meticulously observing your own thought processes as they're happening, which is a lot harder than it sounds, actually.
Oh, I bet. I can only imagine trying to catch my own thoughts in the act, like, wait a minute, brain. Well, with that thought you just had, come back here.
Right. It's tricky. And they also, they conduct psychological experiments. So observing how people react to different stimuli, how they solve problems, how they make decisions, all those things that make us tick.
Yeah. All the stuff that makes us human.
Exactly. And then there's brain imaging, which is, it allows us to actually watch the brain in action, like see which parts light up during different kinds of tasks.
It's like we're trying to figure out how this incredibly complex machine works, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can observe what it does. You can run tests. You can even like look inside and see the gears turning. But instead of gears, we're talking about like neurons and synapses and all that brain stuff.
A perfect analogy. And the ultimate goal of this, of cognitive modeling, is to be able to translate all of those observations, like all that data, into computational models, basically. So researchers are trying to program computers to think in a way that's actually like a mirror of the human mind.
Okay, that is mind-blowing. I mean, are there any AI models out there right now that can like truly be said to think like humans?
Yeah.
Or are we still a ways off from that kind of sophisticated AI?
That's a great question. And it sparks a lot of debate. The text actually mentions this program called the General Problem Solver, or GPS.
GPS, like the navigation system?
Well, no, not quite. This was a program developed way back by Alan Newell and Herbert Simon. It's kind of a classic example of early AI. And what's interesting is that, the creators, they weren't just focused on whether GPS could actually get to the right answer to a problem. They were more interested in how it got there. So they actually compared the program's step-by-step process of solving a problem to how humans approach those same problems.
Oh, so they were like checking the AI's work, not just to see if it got the answer right, but to see if its thought process made sense, if it showed its work, so to speak.
Exactly. And this gets to a really key point. Understanding the process of thinking is just as important, maybe even more important than just the outcome, the answer itself.
It makes you wonder if we can eventually get to a point where we can like program a machine to think rationally. Could it actually at some point surpass human intelligence? Like, could AI actually become smarter than its creators? That's kind of a scary thought, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a question that's, captured imaginations for a long time, right? Science fiction writers, philosophers, they've all kind of grappled with this.
Yeah.
And the text does touch upon this idea of machines potentially exceeding human limits, but it doesn't really try to give us easy answers.
Right. Because I mean, who really knows? And that's where things start to get really interesting, I think, and maybe a little unsettling. But before we get too deep into that rabbit hole, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. This whole discussion of reasoning and logic, it seems like it has like really deep roots in philosophy, right? I mean, we can't forget about Aristotle and his syllogisms. Absolutely. And this text really emphasizes how Aristotle's work. It really laid the groundwork for what we now call the laws of thought approach to AI. It's all about like using formal logic and very strict rules to arrive at conclusions that are valid.
Okay, so if we could somehow express knowledge in this very, very formal, logical way, could we then like program a computer to understand and use that knowledge to essentially like create this perfectly rational machine? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, that's the hope, you could say. But the text does point out some pretty major challenges with this approach.
Okay, like what?
Well, for one thing, translating all the messiness and the uncertainty of real world knowledge into this very rigid, structured format of formal logic, that can be incredibly difficult to do. The world is full of nuance, shades of gray, but logic often demands things to be, black or white.
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be a major hurdle. So what's the second big challenge with this approach?
Well, even if we could perfectly represent all knowledge logically, the sheer computational power that you'd need to actually process that much information to sift through all the possibilities and then like make a decision, that could be completely overwhelming, even for today's computers, which are, obviously very powerful.
So it's not as easy as like just teaching computers to think like logicians.
Not at all. And that leads us to yet another fascinating approach to AI that this text explores, the concept of the rational agent.
Okay, now you've really got me curious about this. What exactly is a rational agent? I gotta say, the image that pops into my head is like a super smart secret agent, but an artificial one.
I love that image.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. But in this context, an agent is really just any entity, anything that can perceive its environment, so it can like sense what's around it and then take actions based on what it perceives. Your Roomba vacuum cleaner, for example, that's a very, very simple kind of agent.
Oh, I see. So it's not so much about being like human-like in how it looks or acts. It's more about having this basic ability to sense the world around you and then react to it in some way.
Exactly. You got it. Now, a rational agent, though, it takes it a step further. So a rational agent will consistently choose the best possible course of action to achieve its goals, whatever those goals might be, given the information that it has.
So it's not just reacting. It's about like strategically making the smartest possible decision, even when things are like unpredictable or the situation is constantly changing.
Precisely. This approach shifts the focus from just, being logically correct in a kind of vacuum to actually making the best possible choices, even in the face of uncertainty when there's, maybe not enough information. The real world is rarely black and white, right?
For sure. For sure. The real world is full of surprises, curveballs. So any intelligence system would need to be able to handle that.
Yeah.
But how does this rational agent idea connect back to the other approaches to AI we've been talking about? Is this like a totally separate thing or?
See, that's what's so interesting. It's not necessarily in competition with the other approaches. A rational agent might very well use, logic and reasoning. It might learn from its experiences, adapt to new situations. It might even, rely on something kind of like instinct when it needs to.
So it's more about like pulling together all these different tools, all these different approaches in a way that makes sense for whatever its goals are.
Exactly. A truly intelligent agent, and that could be a computer program, it could be a biological organism. It needs to be able to actually put its knowledge, its skills into action in the messy real world. It's not enough to just be able to think rationally. You have to be able to act rationally too. And that can get very, very complex very quickly because, actions have consequences, and those consequences aren't always predictable.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it. Building machines that can think rationally, but then also like take that a step further and actually act rationally in a world that's full of uncertainty and surprises. That raises a whole bunch of other questions, right? I feel like we're starting to like bump up against some really big philosophical questions here.
You're absolutely right. When you start talking about creating artificial intelligence, it inevitably leads you to some of the same questions that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries. It makes you realize AI isn't just about like lines of code or algorithms. It's really about like what it even means to be human, to think, to make choices.
It's like AI is like holding up a mirror to our own minds, forcing us to really look at ourselves and examine what's going on in there. And speaking of examining the mind, one of the biggest, most enduring philosophical debates has to be like free will versus determinism. Is that something this text explores at all?
It does touch on it. I mean, it makes sense, right? If our brains are essentially just biological machines governed by the laws of physics and chemical reactions, then does free will even really exist? Or is it just an illusion? Is it just our conscious mind trying to make sense of all the insane complexity that's happening in our brains?
Okay, wow, yeah, that is a truly mind-bending thought. Are you saying that our choices, our desires, our sense of self, like all of it is already predetermined?
Yeah.
That we're all just along for the ride?
It's a question that's plagued philosophers for ages, right?
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer, but it's a question that has huge implications for how we think about like responsibility, morality, even the meaning of life. This text doesn't necessarily try to give us the answer, but it definitely raises the question in a way that really makes you think.
It definitely does. I think my head's about to explode over here, but I guess that's kind of the price of admission when you're exploring something as complex and mysterious as intelligence, right? It's not just a technical puzzle to be solved. It's like a philosophical labyrinth. So where does this deep dive into AI leave us? I mean, we've covered so much ground here. We've talked about ancient philosophers, modern machines, everything in between.
And it's fascinating, right? Because all these different approaches, from cognitive modeling to rational agents, they're all ultimately trying to get at this same basic question. What is intelligence? Can we even define it? And if so, is it something that we can like replicate in a machine?
In a computer.
Right. And is there one like right way to build an intelligent machine? One approach that's just head and shoulders above all the others?
That's the $1 million question. And this text certainly isn't claiming to have all the answers. I mean, maybe true intelligence, maybe it requires a more holistic approach, something that combines logic and learning and adaptation and maybe even something like intuition, aspects of intelligence that frankly we don't even fully understand ourselves yet. It's true. And it seems like with this topic especially, every answer we uncovered just seems to lead to even more profound and difficult questions, which I guess is a good reminder that the quest to really understand intelligence, both our own and the artificial kind, it's a journey. It's not a destination.
I absolutely agree with that. It's a continuous exploration. And that's part of what makes this field so captivating, I think. It really pushes the boundaries of human knowledge. It forces us to really confront our suspicions about the mind and the very nature of intelligence.
Well said. This deep dive has it's given me a lot to think about, that's for sure. The history of all this, the different approaches, the ethical issues, the philosophical questions. If someone listening to this wants to dive deeper into this themselves, where should they even begin?
Well, that's the great thing about this field. It's constantly evolving. There are tons of amazing books out there, articles, online courses even, all dedicated to AI. I always recommend, if you're really feeling ambitious, start with some of the original research papers.
Jump right into the deep end.
Right. But most importantly, never stop asking questions. That's really the key.
Those are words to live by, my friend. Well, on that note, I think we've given our listeners plenty to ponder and chew on for now. Until next time, everyone, keep exploring those big questions, keep asking them, and keep diving deep.